I use these brushes every single time I do my makeup. Let's get started with getting our foundation on. The most popular foundation brush would be the 101. I absolutely love this. I actually bought one of these on my own and then they sent me one. I use this one. I do love it. It's beautiful. It works. There's no doubt about it that when they created this brush, they knew what they were doing. It's gorgeous. I use the 106 more. Why do I use the 106 more? Here's the reason. This one does just as good. Like, it applies just as good. It takes a little longer because it's smaller, but I also have smaller features, so it doesn't take that much longer. The difference is this. When I get to the point of this where it's all put on there and I want to kind of buff it out, this one doesn't buff as easy because it's just the way it's angled, the surface of it, it just doesn't buff. This one buffs. This one I can release the tension a little bit, like I don't press as hard, and I can just kind of rub it across my face and just kind of buff out any brush strokes or anything like that. Now, could you have a 101 and then flip to this? Yes, if you want to spend that money, of course you can do that. For me personally, I like using the 106 better. Does that mean I never use the 101? No. If this is dirty and I need to use a brush, then I'll switch to the 101, absolutely. It works just as good. It's just the way I use it. And I will say that throughout this whole thing. It's the way I use it. The other thing I like about it is I can get in here a little bit easier. Not that you can't hear, but it's like you kind of have to flip it around, where I would rather just get a smaller one and use it that way. So I don't know, it's just easier for me. If you have the 101 already, I do not think it's worth it to buy the 106 on top of that if money is tight. If money is not tight, I absolutely love having both. One thing you could do if you don't want to buy the 106 but you like having something softened, what I would do is go get a Stands Out Beauty sponge. This is $20, well worth it. I would just blot out my foundation. I do this anyways. Now, I need to tell you right off the bat, which isn't right off the bat because I've already started talking, but BK Beauty sent me all of these brushes. They did not send it with any kind of contingency that I talk about them. They literally say that on the email they send to me, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate that brands are bold enough to say, here's our product. There's no strings attached, nothing. We want you to try it out. If you talk about it, great. If you don't, it's not like they write me off. They've still sent me more things. That is a brand with integrity, and I appreciate that. I have some of my concealer on. I know that a lot of people love the A506. This was in a collaboration with Angie of Hot and Flashy. This was in her brush set. You can get all the BK brushes individual now, so you don't have to buy it in a set. When this came, this is supposed to be for under eye concealer. I don't use it for that. I love it, but I don't use it for that. I actually use a different brush, and it's from Beauty Pie, which you do have to have a membership to Beauty Pie to purchase it for the cost of, I think it's $12 with their membership. It's $35 without the membership. I love it because of the shape. So this will get right in the corner, and if BK Beauty had one this shape, I would buy it, but they don't. It's just, I don't know why, it just works really well for me. Here, I'll show you the difference. Let me get this brush blended in first, and I'll show you the difference in the shape. And it's probably because of my eye shape or how small my eye is. See how this one just fits right in the corner like that? This one is wider. See how it's just wider. And this one's actually really pretty stiff, where this one's got, I mean, it's stiff, but it's got some looseness to it. This one's not as loose. So that is why I like it. I like it to be able to go down, try to hide my marionette lines. It just works well there. And then right in the crease of my nose. This is how I use A506. I like to use it for setting. Now, setting can be used a couple brushes. I'm going to set under my eye, so I love pressed powder, so I'm going to just press it in, and then I make sure it is really pressed in, and then I'm going to use this, and there, I like it for that. I just really like it for that more than the actual concealer. Another one you could use is the 113. This one is obviously bigger. You can see the difference between the two. It's a completely different shape, but it does work well for putting powder on. I think this one's better for loose powder. I don't use loose powder, and that's the reason I don't use this much. If you have this one, I don't think I would go out and get this one unless you're going to use this for the concealer, because most people love this for the concealer aspect of it. I just don't. I think it works really well for setting under my eyes, and it's because of the smallness of it, and for setting around my nose, and that's because I can really get it in there. Again, this one would work just fine. You could get this point right in there easily. If you're using a loose powder, you may like this one better. Now, what about setting my face all over, like my forehead lines and things like that? I would much rather, for me, use a puff for pressing in my pressed powder. It just, for me, is the best way to do it. My puffs I get off of Amazon. So I'm going to use the same powder. I'm going to use my Stands Out sponge, get any creases out, and then I'm going to press this into my forehead. And I like this because I can regulate the pressure. And again, I could use this and go under my eyes. Like if you wanted to use it for that instead, obviously it'll do it all. So sometimes that's what I do. Sometimes I don't use the brush and I use only a puff. It's just kind of the mood I'm in, but if you're really tight on funds and you're trying to really narrow down just exactly the ones, then maybe don't buy a brush for that type, buy a puff instead. This is extremely cheap, reusable multiple times. I've washed them. I'm obviously linking this below, so that is some way you could save money. I did do my eyebrows and I put on an all over color on my eyes just to blank out all the redness and yuckiness. That's where the A506 brush comes in again. I'm going to use my pressed powder, and this is where this is perfect as well. It just fits just right underneath. I love it for this. And I just press it in and just set my primer and my all over cream shadow. Okay, let's do some eyeshadow. The BK Beauty brushes are just amazing, specifically for those of us who have hooded eyes like mine. I have a really hard time because I don't have a lot of real estate in this area. There's not a lot to play with. So having smaller brushes that are made specifically for hooded eyes are a game changer. I'm going to use the A503, and this is the one that I would use for all over, like getting a base coat or in the crease, something like that. It's a little bit fluffier, but it's got a good dome to it, and it's got some movement, but it's not really stiff. So I'm going to go in with an all over color just to get make sure everything is set. I could have done this instead of the pressed powder. Okay, so you can see it keeps its shape. It's not flimsy. It's not picking up a ton of eyeshadow. I don't need a ton. I need it to just give me an all over look, and that's it. So that's why I like this one. The next one I'm going to go in with is the A502. This one is a smaller dome shape. So you can see the difference here. I'll show you the difference between the two. So this one is the one I use for specifically in my crease and getting basically the shape. This one's really important to me. So I'm going to go in with a deeper color, and I'm just going to go in pretty much on the sides and the tip. Get off the extra. And I will tell you that they say not to do this. They say to put it on your finger. I have arthritis in my finger, so banging on my finger is never going to happen. So I just deal with it and I bang it on the side. Don't do it hard. This is where I will take it and I will just bring it to the edge and bring it over. This, I'm trying to just get a wash of color, and I bring it to the edge and bring it in. So get a little bit more. And I will go ahead and bring some of this onto the lid itself. But you can see it's building a little bit. Not very obvious because I don't want it to be obvious. I'm going for a nice subtle look. So that's what this one's for. The next one I'm going to use is the A504. This one is smaller than the one I just used. And I'm going to use this one for depositing a darker color right on the outside of my lid. So I'm going to load it up just with the tip. So I'm going to start where I want it to be the strongest and blend it out. And that's where this one's just wonderful because it is stiffer. I can control what's happening on my lids instead of it being all over. I can control it because it's smaller. It's always good to look straight on and see where I need to deposit some more. See how it's small and it just gets right in there. I don't have to really struggle to get it to deposit more. Then I will go in with the 201. This one is very similar to the A503, but it's just a little bit more fluffy. You could use this one again. Absolutely, but this is my blending one. And I'm just going to take this and make sure that I have no harsh lines. The next one is the 209. This is one of their newer ones. I love this brush because it's very narrow but flat. And I use this one, oh my goodness, so much. And I'm going to take it and just go right under my brow. And it just highlights that area. And I can control how much happens. A little bit more on this side. For any kind of glitter or shimmer or anything, I use my fingers. I just think it works the best. You may want to use a brush. I just don't. What I will do is I'll deposit a bunch. I will take one of my blending brushes and then just blend it out. That helps me to just get it deposited where I want it to be. I'm going to make sure it's not in my corner too much. I went ahead and tight lined with the Makeup Forever Aqua Resist in brown. So I just tight lined right underneath my eyeline there. One thing that you could do, and I think that this works great for this, is to take the 204 and smudge it. So this one's a really stiff, short brush. And it works well to be able to take an eyeline and just smudge it to your corner a bit, which is not going to be extremely noticeable to you. e.l.f. does make a brush that's extremely similar to this one that I could use interchangeably. So if you want to save, this could be one of those areas. This one is amazing, but if you wanted to save, you could go for that one. Now, if you wanted to put an eyeline underneath your eye, a couple things you could use. Like if you're going to do an eyeliner, like a true eyeliner, which I don't use, but I wanted to tell you if you do, and you wanted to smudge it out, this one's amazing for that. Another one that you could use would be the 210. This got a really nice tip to it. I use this one when I want to do a powder underneath my eye, which is what I do most of the time. If you want a thicker line, I would go with this one. This is the 210. This is going to give you a pretty thick line underneath here, but not so thick that you're like, oh my, a lot of shadow is there. I actually like Rephr for this one. I like the Rephr 23 because of how tiny this thing is. See how much smaller the Rephr is? And when you've got small eyes, it really does matter. So I'm going to take my darker one and I'm going to just load up my Rephr one. So it's got a nice little tip on it. And I'm going to put it right underneath my eye. And I'm going to wing it out. You're not going to really see the wing, obviously, because it's very subtle. But there's the difference between the two. If you wanted to do a really tight, darker line, you could use the 208. This is a tiny, tiny, tiny brush. Angled, and it's made for doing eyeliner. So I could go in with a darker color and really go close to my lash line. This is not going to show up because I'm not really using a darker color because I don't do this look. But you may want to. And if I did, I would use this brush because it's just so little and perfect for tight lining right along your lash line. If you want to buy less brushes, but you want to be able to interchange them, so you want to switch colors and not have to worry about getting a color on another part of your eye, this Sigma switch is one of the best things that you could buy. It's from the brand Sigma. This will make it so that when you want to change out, you can just brush it against this and it'll take the color off, and then you can use the same brush and another color on your eye. One of the best investments. I will link it below. Absolutely worth the money. All right, let's talk bronzer. If I were going to use a powder one, I would use one of these two brushes. I don't think you need both. If you bought the Angie Hot and Flashy set, you have this one. Now, she made this for blush. I actually don't like it for blush only because I have a small area here and this is a bigger brush for my features. So I actually like this for bronzer because it's angled and it fits right in there. So I would use this one, or I would use the 107 brush. Now this is a completely different brush. One's angled, one's not. But you can see they're about the same width. And I like the bronzer for this because it's flatter, like it's obviously wider and then thinner here. So it just fits right where I would use it right there for bronzer. If I'm going to use a cream bronzer, I would use either the 106 brush, which is the same brush. I actually have two of these. It's the same one I use to do my foundation because foundation is cream. It works really well with a cream product. So I would either use this one or I would use the 109 brush. These are completely different. They can be used for the same product, just used a little differently. The 109 is an angled brush. You can see it almost looks like it's just a smaller version of the 101. So again, it's because it's good for a cream product. This one is amazing for a cream bronzer because it's small. You can either put it this way, or I actually saw Lisa, who is from Lisa J. She's the one who is the founder of BK Beauty. She does it some of the time. I do the same thing she does. She turns it upside down. And I was like, oh, I do that too. I was so proud of myself because she's a makeup artist. I am not a makeup artist. But I did do that. I was like, oh, I like it that way too. So it really is what you want. I think if you have the 106 and you have the 101, maybe use the 101 to put foundation on and the 106 to do it with bronzer. I actually have two of these, one for foundation and one for bronzer. So I'll show you the difference on both sides. I'm going to use a cream bronzer and I'm going to use the Revolution one because I love it. So I'm just going to tap it in, have it on there, and then I'm going to place it right there. Now again, you could turn it upside down. This is a very subtle bronzer. I love it. It's really one of my most favorite bronzers. So you can see it's very manageable as far as getting it to be where you want it to be because it's smaller. That's why I like it. Here's the 106 brush. Again, I'm going to dab it in and place it. It's a little bit wider, but you can see it's very manageable where it goes. Now I can also take it and put it above on my forehead and bronze my forehead. And I can do the same thing with the 109, like I could use it up there. I'm going to use it under my chin this time. So it's very manageable. Either one of them is great. And I kind of use them interchangeably. It kind of depends on which one I have. Again, I know I have all of them because they were sent to me. So I use way more than probably you would, but I'm showing you all your options so you can make a decision based on what your budget is. Now, if I'm going to use a bronzer that's powder, like I said, I would use either this one. So I'm going to set this. I don't need to, but I'm going to just to show you. So this is the Physicians Formula, and I'm just going to use it to go see how it works really well. Like I know it's a lot of bronzer. This is the 107 brush. So again, I would use this one for bronzer because it just works well there as well. And again, you could use this underneath your chin. You can use it for your forehead. So now I've got a lot of bronzer on. If I'm using a cream blush, I would use another 106. Like I honestly, I could use another one of these because I use them constantly. I'm going to put blush like just right there. And I'm going to take the 106 and just remember that buffing thing I really like about this brush? Well, I'm going to want my blush to be buffed. See how it just, whew, it's beautiful. Love it for that. Now, what if I wanted to, oh, I should probably do the other side. I'll do the other side. What if I wanted to use a powder blush? My favorite one is the BK 112. 112 is one of their newer ones. It is an angle, and an angle is my absolute favorite for a powder blush. And I'm just going to, and this one's so nice because it's small. I can lightly dust it on and it just works. It's not going to show up much because obviously I already have it on there. And I would not do both of these. I don't need to do both. Some people actually do, but it's just nice. If I wanted it to go down my nose, if I wanted to give a little more like a sun-kissed look, I could do it over my nose and it just fits. Again, because it's small. The last brush I use is the 105. This one is huge, but it is just a powerhouse for giving an all-over blend. So once everything is on, and I just want to make sure everything doesn't have any harsh lines, I will take this one. It's pretty stiff, as you can see, but it's not so stiff that it doesn't have movement. But it's not like a fluffy brush. And I will just take this and just make sure everything is blended well. Like I have no lines. Nothing is just looking extra in any spot or anything. This is, to me, one of those last things that you just don't want to have any, especially here. Do you have to have this? No. Could you use your powder brush, your powder puff? Yes, I just don't think it does as well as this. But you guys wanted to know what I use every day, and this is definitely one of them. Now you're going to want to be able to clean these brushes, so I'm going to link a video right here on how I clean all of my brushes. We'll see you in that one or another one. God bless.